Real Red Meat Radio on the Lars Larson Show.
Welcome back to the Lars Larson Show. Pleasure to be with you. Glad to take your phone calls on the first post day after the release of 2 pages of President Donald Trump's tax information. For all the folks out there happy about that, Chris Copeland joins me now, director of the Institute for Homeland Security, Cybercrime, and International Criminal Justice Studies at Tarleton State University in Fort Worth, Texas. It's good to have you on, sir.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So we saw these charges. Actually, the DOJ kind of prefaced them last night by sending out a release, a really cryptic release saying, we have something really big to announce tomorrow, but we can't tell you what it is. This has to do with Russian spies and criminal hackers and 500 million Yahoo user accounts?
Yes, at least 500 million. That's probably underreported.
Seriously, you
it's
think
probably a little bit more than that?
Maybe.
Yeah, it's probably closer to 550 or 600.
Well, when you get to numbers like that, what's an extra 50 million Yahoo users, right? So
Exactly.
But they're saying that this was state-sponsored cybercrime, right?
So the way that Russia typically operates is that they don't have a cyber army. They don't have a part of the military that operates not the way we do. We have part of Cyber Command as part of the U.S. military. China has an absolute division of their military that operates for cyber warfare. Iran does the same thing, but Russia doesn't. They have very minimal resources when it comes to this. So what they typically do is they lease themselves out, or they subcontract, if you will, out to hacker groups that are tied to Russian organized crime. And these groups are in Estonia, they're in Latvia, they're in all the former Soviet bloc states, Georgia, and they go out and they get what the government wants them to do for a fee, and then anything they find along the way is theirs to keep. So in response to this, they were probably going after several dozens, millions of targets, but the response there was that, if you can break into all of them, go ahead and grab whatever you want, and then we'll pay you for what we've asked you to do.
Would a lawyer call that fee contingent espionage? I mean, really?
Yeah, so basically that's exactly what it sounds like. It's like a scene from a movie. We want these 2 shotguns from, I thought the movie was Brad Pitt or something like that. But, that we want these 2 items, but anything else you find while you're burglarizing the place, go ahead and take for yourselves. And that's pretty much the way Russian organized crime works. They're definitely and severely tied to making money. So it's not uncommon for the FSB to hire people out. And Alexei Balan is a well-known artist in the hacking communities, both on Clearweb and the dark web. He's very infamous, has been for a few years. He's been on the FBI watch list for several years now. So to see him involved, again, not a real surprise.
And none of this is related to trying to interfere with 2016's election.
No, this is all about the Yahoo breaches, which unfortunately for Yahoo, they now hold the record for the first and second spots for the number of accounts lost. And I feel sorry for them, but they do hold the record right now at 1 billion accounts on one hack and 550+ million on the other.
Well, let me ask you something about that, about feeling sorry for them. How much of this could they have anticipated and guarded against, and how much of this was about the skill of Russian hackers, and how much of it was about the I guess, negligence of Yahoo? Or was any of it negligence by Yahoo?
I don't know that Yahoo's necessarily negligent. I use their services for a number of years. I've known people at Yahoo. They take security very seriously. They just happen to have been the victim this time. There's nothing to say that another primary service can't be a victim on the same scale. It's just unfortunate that Yahoo was the victim in this particular instance. So I wouldn't necessarily call it negligence. And I'm the first to point fingers when it's necessary, but I wouldn't necessarily call it on this case.
I'm talking to Chris Copeland, who's director of the Institute for Homeland Security at Tarleton State University in Fort Worth. Well, the reason I ask it that way is we all realize that when we lock the front door at home, that a really determined thief can get past almost any lock. So that was more what I was getting at, is whether these are just exceptionally skilled hackers who have an exceptionally long period of time, to go after things, and they can just keep going after it until they get it, because obviously if they're working for not only the spoils but working for the government, the Russian government, then they can invest probably almost any amount of time or resources if the target is important enough.
That's very well said. When it comes right down to it, this is their day job, is doing this for respective governments or other groups. They are very skilled. So to think that these guys pulled off this hack in a matter of hours is really movie science fiction at its best. This hack probably took several months of planning, several months of just lurking and figuring out how things worked, phishing on a few people's emails. All they have to do is catch one to gain access to a server, and then sit there and just gather more information until you can take control of the whole thing. This was probably several months in the process before all this information was stolen, and they were paid probably very handsomely. My guess is on the order of $200,000 to $300,000 for a job like this is very normal, and then they'll sell the remaining information on the black market for pennies on the dollar.
So if this was done at the behest of the Russian government, what should the United States do to Russia?
Well, it's not necessarily that they can do anything to Russia. It depends on what the target was. If the target was one or two people, like the DNC or the RNC, then there's very little. If the target was, the entirety of Yahoo to bring down a major company, then there's a lot you can do. You can find these people. You can seize their assets. You can seize any number of things that are tied to the government. If you can put it in there that the government did it and you can show it, you can even apply sanctions to the country as a whole. It brings back things to the negotiating table. But and more in terms of these four people, it allows them to seize assets directly on these people. And more importantly, if they travel to a company, that's a big if they travel to a country, where there's an extradition agreement, they could be picked up. Balan's been known to travel to and from Turkey and Greece. So whether he goes to Greece ever again and whether Greece ever arrests him and extradites him to the U.S. is a big if, but that's an option now.
Now, let me ask you this, though. From the point of view of the Russian government, if they got what they wanted out of this, and these people are now international criminals hiding in Russia where we have no extradition treaty, is there a percentage in it for the Russian government to say, well, look, we'll hand them over to you. They're charged in your country. Or is it better for them just to hang on to them and, in effect, shelter them, given that they were working for the Russian government in this hack?
So if I were the Russian government and I were going to operate typically the way the FSB normally does, I would deny everything and be absolved. I wouldn't do either one. They're going to absolutely say, well, these guys acted on their own accord. They didn't act within the scope of the government, regardless of what they say. If you ever catch them, there's going to be complete denial on the entire thing and complete absolution, because that's the way the Russian government operates.
Do you think there's any percentage, if you can pick one of them up when they happen to slip up and go across the border, that you might be able to get them to tell us everything they know rather than spend the next several decades sitting in a prison?
So it'll probably be a combination of both. It's not uncommon to take extremely skilled people and then turn them into assets for the United States government. That's worked most of the time. It's come back to bite us a couple of times. But for the most part, if we can take them, we will.
Mr. Copeland, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
You bet. Chris Copeland is the director of the Institute for Homeland Security at Tarleton State University in Fort Worth, Texas. Coming up in a moment, we'll get to your phone calls and your emails at 866-439-5277. Emails go to talk@larslarson.com. And the fake stream media has been having a heyday with 2 pages from Donald Trump's tax return from more than a decade ago. Why aren't any of them questioning if this was even legal or ethical in the first place? It's the Lars Larson Show.
The Lars Larson Show.